that happen? Yeah. Hey, good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone out to Law and Licensing Committee. I apologize that we're running a little bit late. Uh, let's do a quick roll call. We'll start with Member Hall, Member Longacre, Vice Chair Bollinger, and Member Lear. Okay, so we have everyone here, and I believe we have 3 individuals for public comment. Is that correct? Okay, and Vanessa, who's first? Christine Christensen? Okay, Christine, can you hear us?
Yes, good
Okay.
morning.
And we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. I wanted to comment about the Partnership for Student Success program and the continuation of that program. I am currently the Director of Community Schools for Granite School District, but I was a principal at one of our elementary schools, Wilson Elementary in South Salt Lake, where I oversaw students that were experiencing poverty, came from many different countries, spoke many different languages. And in 2016, when I was appointed there, we were seeing reading and math scores in the single digits and teens at that school. We were able to forge some of these partnerships with these communities that helped us to engage with our families in a way that we hadn't been able to before, and to be able to meet their needs, meet their basic needs, and take away those barriers to student learning. And I'm happy to say that because of those partnerships and the things that we were able to do, that in 2022, Wilson Elementary exited all sanction status with reading and math scores 20 to 25% higher than they were when we started. And I really think that those partnerships and those people that we were able to bring in and partner with to help our students really made a difference. So I would just want to have you continue that program and let the schools work with those partners and fund that so that they can help us in educating our most at-risk students. Thank you for your time this morning.
Christine, thank you very much. Vanessa? Oh, Cassie? Oh, come on up. Oh, your choice, but
Good morning. My name is Cassie Saxton, and I serve as the Director of Family and Community Engagement for Abilene School District. And I'm here, as Christy was, to speak on behalf of the Partnership for Student Success grant. I oversee 5 schools in our Orem area that benefit from this grant, and we work with our community partners. And we have established some wraparound services for our students as part of this grant, and we would love to see that continue. We've formed some great partnerships, and with the support of all of those partnerships, we are helping the students thrive in and out of the classroom. Some of our greatest achievements, we track a lot of goals and outcomes, but one of those great achievements is our literacy growth. We track kindergarten, 3rd grade, and 8th grade Acadians. And in our kindergarten, this last year, we saw some great achievements in our literacy benchmarks. For example, our one elementary school, Westmore, went from 35% to 78% from their beginning of the year to end of the year, which is a growth of 43%, and that is a wow. So we're doing some great celebrations with that school and our partners because it's a whole team approach. With those goals, we bring in our community partners 4 times a year, and we really set action steps to support those literacy goals. So our Orem PD comes and reads in every kindergarten classroom every month, which is awesome for that connection and that safety piece. We have Boys and Girls Club that offers after-school programs and an extended school year into the summer. And then we have literacy nights hosted by United Way and at the school that helps parents understand the importance of reading with their students at home. We track into junior high and high school on a whole pattern. So we have 3 elementary, 1 junior high, and 1 high school. And so we can track that feeder pattern. And we'd love to have another 5 years to see that 10 years of growth. In our junior high, Orem Junior, this past year, we saw our 9th grade completion go from 61% at the beginning of our tracking 3 years ago to 87%, which is huge. Our high school graduation went from 82 to 88. and some really specific goals within high school. We have concurrent enrollment that almost doubled. We went from 293 when we began in 2021 to 600 students accessing concurrent enrollment, and the number of credits went from 1922 to 4515, so more than double. So we're excited to see students get on that career path to college and career readiness. This grant has enabled us to work towards our common goals and our desired outcomes and really combine efforts. And we're seeing that difference in the lives of our students and their families. Discontinuing this funding would unravel the progress that we've made. We hope that we can continue with these partnerships and expand our impact and ensure that our positive changes will last for years to come. So we appreciate your support on this grant and thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Cassie. And we have one more. Oh, Superintendent Mon? Can you hear us, Superintendent? Superintendent, if you can hear us, we can't hear or see.
Yeah,
Oh, there we go.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not there in person. I'm just up on the hill. So first, I just want to thank you, the chair, and members of the board for the opportunity to provide some feedback on R277-322. I appreciate being asked to share some candid input before you guys, and I just want to start off by saying I'm offering the comments that I have are in the spirit that they're intended, supportive of the goal. But I do have some concerns about how it may play out for districts and local boards. There are parts of the draft 3 that I genuinely appreciate. The focus on student safety and preventing grooming behaviors, especially in today's digital environment, it is important and overdue. I also strongly support the protections for good faith reporting and the limits on confidentiality agreements that could suppress safety concerns. From a governance standpoint, I understand the desire for annual board attestations, and I don't disagree with that in principle. That said, some of my concerns are first, the definition of sexual conduct has become very broad and highly subjective. Language like conduct that could be reasonably perceived as boundary blurring will likely be interpreted differently across districts and administrators. Likely results is either a chilling effect on appropriate educator-student interactions, like counselors, special education, health, secondary settings, or overcorrection driven by risk avoidance. Related to that, continued reliance on the term position of special trust without a finalized, clearly bounded definition creates real implementation challenges. Most districts will end up just defaulting to the broadest interpretation possible, which leads to inconsistency and confusion statewide. I'm also have some concern about just a compliance heavy, how compliance heavy the rules become. The accumulation of attestations, reporting requirements, audit involvement, and sanction language represents a shift away from local governance towards state level compliance monitoring. And for small and rural districts, especially, that burden risks pulling time and capacity away from the prevention, from the training, and the relationship based work that actually keeps students safe. The political and ideological neutrality language is another area of concern. Terms like politically charged language or ideological expression are subjective and will invite complaints, placing boards in different positions under public pressure. Even with a de minimis exception, I worry it will generate conflict rather than clarity and erode trust in locally elected boards. Finally, the reporting requirements tied to employee separations raise due process concerns. Without clearer distinctions between substantiated and contested allegations, districts may be required to report unresolved matters with serious implications for employees and districts alike. If the board's open to adjustments, I believe the rule would be materially improved by tightening and finalizing some definitions and adding clear guardrails and examples to strengthen safe harbors for curriculum-aligned instruction and counseling, clarifying the scope of political neutrality, streamlining training and attestations, and providing clear guidance on separation, reporting, and implementation guidelines. I do share the board's commitment to student safety and to the professional conduct, and I want the rule to succeed. I'd also be happy to participate in any working group with Chair Carey or others, if that would be helpful. I'd appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback to you. Thank you. And I do agree with the spirit of this bill.
Thank you very much for that public comment. Vanessa, is there anything else? Okay, so with that, let's go to our first action item. which conveniently, no, it's not. It's our information item from Dr. Height. And Dr. Height, I heard you say wow twice during Casey's public comment, and I think that's a first. So I, but it was like real, like it was an authentic wow. You were.
My colleague up here. Just
And just for the public, Dr. Height is required by board rule to provide an annual report on educator licensing and preparation, and this is their presentation.
share. Well, good morning, committee, and thank you so much for that brief intro. My name is Malia Height. I'm the Executive Coordinator of Educator Licensing, and I'm here with my colleague who I'll let introduce herself to provide the annual report to the board regarding educator licensing and preparation.
And I'm Lisa McLaughlin. I'm the Educator Preparation Coordinator.
So as the chair did just summarize, every year we are required to provide an annual report to the board that includes an update on educator licensing, educator preparation, and the equitable distribution of teachers. And so we are going to provide that today and share some highlights related to educator licensing and preparation. And we're going to start with...
Dr. Height, I know it's only page 2, but
yes, sir.
let me just let the committee know. I think it's better, and if you don't have any objections, Dr. Height, if the committee members have questions, I'd like them to be able to ask during the presentation. Is that workable?
Absolutely. That would be preferred from our perspective because there's a lot of numbers in here.
And then when I looked at this, C says equitable distribution of teachers. Can you define what we mean by that?
So this term has never been formally defined by the board. And so what we have done is shared how teachers are distributed across content areas, elementary, secondary, special education, as well as teachers that are assigned to all students, and then teachers serving in schools with a high incidence of low-income students, so Title I schools.
If this provision did not exist, what would change in terms of how you do your job?
I don't believe that I would change what I do necessarily with respect to this report, but that would be at the direction of the board.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting it's
Yeah.
not needed. I'm just trying to find out, well, if it is needed and if your job would change if it wasn't there. And it sounds like it wouldn't.
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start with educator preparation. And when we talk about educator preparation, we talk about programs that are approved by the board staff, superintendent, sometimes the board. And that usually includes preparation programs that are housed within 10 institutions of higher ed, or university programs, as we affectionately call them. And then we also have 50 LEA-based alternative pathway to professional educator license, or APPLE programs, that include programs. These programs include partnerships with 145 LEAs, 25 accredited private schools, and then there is one APPLE program that is administered by the State Board of Education, which is our APPLE Special Ed program, and they prepare educators in special ed and speech language technician. And about 2020 is when the legislature moved educator preparation to a competency-based model, and this has had a huge impact on our programs and in licensing. where we are giving value to individuals' knowledge and skills and personalized preparation. The purpose of this is to reduce barriers and increase flexibility to high-quality preparation. And that was also when our Apple programs were created in response to feedback from the field in that they wanted to move that preparation to the local area and the LEAs and give them more autonomy over that. And so that is allowing them to be more innovative and highly personalized with their preparation. And Apple programs are, if we take all their enrollment and all those 50 programs and combine them, they represent the largest enrollment as far as teacher preparation goes in the state. There's like 1,000 more educators in Apple than there is in any one university program. So just to keep that in perspective. Last year, there were 2,562 educators enrolled in an Apple program, and then there were about 725 people who completed an Apple program and earned a professional teaching license.
And if I may, are you, I don't know if you can answer this because I'm going to ask you to put yourselves in the shoes of the universities and colleges that offer this, their version of the program. Do they view Apple as competition? Do they view it as, hey, that student would be at my school if they weren't in Apple? Or can you describe that relationship generally?
Yes, there was some question about that, which is why we did look at enrollment by institution, which we'll talk about in just a minute. We have not seen that in the data, that they're stealing people from their institutions. What we've found is that Apple candidates are different. They wouldn't have enrolled in university programs anyway because they're in a different place in their life. So we're really reaching a new population of people to enter the profession.
Thank you.
So this is a statewide look at how an enrollment in teacher preparation has looked over time. This is the last 5 years, and we have seen significant increases in both elementary, secondary, and special ed programs, which we attribute largely to our Apple programs. And we're really excited to see the growth there because nationwide, the dialogue is that enrollment in teacher prep programs has been declining. And then this is a look by institution. This was in response to feedback or questions that we received, is that our Apple programs competing with university programs. And when we look in the last 5 years for enrollment, we see that there are 2 programs or institutions, pathways, that have seen huge increases. We see Apple, and then we also see Weber State, who, if you crunch the numbers, have seen about a 250% increase in enrollment in the last 5 years. We have been talking to these universities to ask them why, the enrollment has been changing, and they have their theories, but I don't know if we have a definitive answer yet, but we are going to meet with them next week to talk more about that. We have seen some programs that have had some slight, I guess you could say, decreases in enrollment. I think the biggest one, it's hard to tell on the chart, but is Westminster. They've seen a 73% decrease in enrollment in the last 5 years. Their numbers are smaller, so it's hard to see, but if you compare theirs specifically, it's pretty significant. And then the next largest would be BYU, and then the next one is University of Utah. BYU has about a 30% decrease, and the University of Utah had a 23% decrease. We did ask them last year. Their University of Utah and Westminster's theory is that their tuition is really high, and it's hard to attract people into the profession when they have to pay so much to get their degree. But we haven't heard a theory from BYU yet, so we're hoping to dig into that a little bit more. And then these are just the numbers for this year as far as, oh yeah, you can go to the next. Oh, question.
So overall, even with the decreases and the increases, overall, how is that number And you already have it ready.
Yes. So overall, because we've seen such large increases with Apple programs and at Weaver State, overall our enrollment in teacher prep has increased. And then these are just the hard numbers for this last year.
Can I stop you
Sure.
for once? Chair Carey, is it okay if I ask a question?
we said we can just ask questions.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, I was getting sustenance. I'm not embarrassed about it. To me, it seems so obvious that, thank you very much, Amanda. It seems so obvious that Weaver State has the lowest tuition, and the Apple program has a much lower tuition than that it is about cost. And you're going into a profession where it's not like you're going to be able to readily repay your student loans. So it just seems, and I don't need to belabor it, but it just seems obvious that it's about cost. I'd be really, really, really interested, and I just mentioned this to Amanda, to see if down the road we see any, if we could track any kind of success component or any misconduct component, frankly, connected to how the students were initially prepared.
Yeah, we have been tying, we don't have it in these slides, but we've been looking at outcomes as far as student achievement. We are currently working with WestEd on a research project that will include those, that we're hoping to have some results in the next couple months.
And that's complicated. I mean, I still believe that student success is about zip codes, so I don't pretend that it would answer all our questions, but I just think it would add, because this is significant. These are significant changes in numbers. Thanks.
Sure.
Oops.
Any other questions?
Just on the chart with is that Southern Utah?
Yes.
And it looks like it
Yeah.
it peaked at the same time that Apple was also hitting that peak, and then unlike Apple, which maintained that level, it looks like they crashed. Do we know why that is?
Not yet. We're going to ask them that next week. And it's possible because SUU has traditionally been a huge partner for our Apple programs in providing coursework and training. And it's possible that they were counting some of those people in their numbers last year, and then we corrected it. But we'll ask them next week.
Okay, and when you get that information, could you report that back to committee?
Sure.
Just via email? Okay, thank you.
And then so there are more teachers enrolled in secondary licensing and throughout the state than other licensures. Elementary comes in second, and then special ed, and then elementary ed. I think that's a big takeaway from this slide. And then we did have a question from Board Member Bollinger about how do Apple numbers compare between districts and charters. And we went and looked at enrollment numbers, and we do have several Apple programs that service both district and charter schools. And when they shared their enrollment information with us, they didn't specify where they were at. And we could probably look it up and guess, but I didn't quite have that time this week to do that. So there are 37% of our enrollment that are unknown at this time, but 2% do come from private schools, 25% come from charters, and then 36% come from districts. And when we compare this to the next slide that talks about completers, you may notice that the numbers shift a little bit. And so there may be something there to look at. And I think we might be collecting that information in the future. So I appreciate that suggestion.
Please, thank you. Thank you. And I really appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I don't want it to take too much time, but I just think it helps us gather information and know what direction we need to go. So just a follow-up question on the unknown. So is this like consortium groups of Apple that's where we don't know which path because they're serving all charter?
Yes.
Okay.
So all of our service centers are Apple programs, and they service both districts and charters. So all the 4 RESAs, and then also our Apple Special Ed services, both districts and charters. So those are the ones we would need to look at to clarify that question. And then you'll notice that there are more, this last year, there were more district completers. They represent a larger percentage of completers than they did enrollment. So this could be due to a number of factors, but we haven't looked into why that is yet. So that would be something we could look at in the future.
And I think that's, we want to just look at, I need that enabler. I think the completer aspect of it is really the most important. I think it's stunning that there are so many more, so few completers compared to the numbers that start. And, you know, there's a lot of anecdotal reasons that we all could express that explain that, but I just think it's a really interesting, dramatic difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's on the next slide. Last year, we did look at how long it was taking Apple candidates to complete their programs. So we looked at the numbers last year, and the average was 2.5 or 2.15 years, or the median was 2 years. We do see about 15% of our Apple teachers that are considered dropped, most likely because they are no longer employed in the school district or charter school for various reasons. Some of them do switch to new programs, but those would be counted as either still enrolled or completed. So that 50% does represent people who have either left teaching or have left the state.
Can we go back to the previous slide? So you said something along the lines of there's a multitude of reasons that you're looking at, my words, my summary of why the completion rate is 43% for districts and 20% for charters. And I know that you haven't had time to do a deep dive, but the top of that list, what are some of those factors that you are thinking may cause this sizable discrepancy?
It would be difficult to say at this point because we haven't looked at it. What I would like to do next is to look at the numbers, the analysis that we did on the next slide, and then compare it from district to charters to see if charter schools are really taking longer to complete or have higher dropout rates than districts. But we don't have that yet.
And I'm not suggesting it be done anytime soon, but do you have an estimate of when that data, you'll have done that deep dive and digested that?
We do have some from our West Ed study, so we would for sure have it in a couple of months, and I think we could definitely have our internal data reviewed by then.
Okay, thank you.
And then we get a lot of questions about retention, and we've done these numbers for the last 3 years, so we've taken 3 different cohorts. This is just the latest cohort, but on average, Apple candidates have higher retention rates than other institutions or pathways. The average retention rate for Apple completers is about 80%. And then for our other institutions, it ranges. You can kind of see that those are actually by the percentages. So let's see, who is that? Who's great? Oh, Weaver State has the next highest. That's right, I knew that. Which is encouraging because those are our highest enrollment programs. So I think a lot of people assume that Apple programs don't have very high retention rates, but our numbers are suggesting otherwise. So okay, I guess we can go.
Yeah, actually, sorry, we're having side we're trying to ask our own questions over here, so I'll put them on the record since I'm trying to keep Carol on the microphone. Thank you. So we were just questioning, so with WGU, I mean, that retention rate is so low compared to the others. So the question is, and of course, we're trying to make our own assumptions, but is that because WGU and those enrolled could be from all over the country? They're not necessarily here in person. Is that a factor in that?
Yes.
Do we know? Okay.
Yeah. And we have been able to basically verify that. And I will say, while it looks like WGU has low retention rates, like 25% of their teachers actually teach in Utah. Once they start teaching in Utah, you'll notice their slope is pretty steady. So once they start, they're more likely to stay. We have been looking at some of the other institutions because like, was it BYU has also a relatively low retention rate, and we had a lot of assumptions about that. I recently found out that only 60% of people enrolled at BYU are actually from Utah. So it's possible that they may be having a similar issue, that their candidates also move out of state. So we'll need to dive into that a little bit more as well. And then we do have several program outcomes that we're tracking, but this is one that I wanted to highlight in this report. And starting in 2020 as part of SB 127, all of our elementary, early childhood, and special ed candidates were required to take what we call the literacy preparation assessment, which measures their knowledge and skills on how to teach literacy, reading and writing and speaking. And we had started that in the 2023 school year with some of our pilot administrations, and then our recent data is really encouraging in that we've seen huge increases in the passing rate for that assessment, and we wanted to share those results today. So this year we've seen an 88% passing rate on the literacy preparation assessment for those candidates.
Isn't that like a wow number?
Yes.
Like you're kind of presenting it like, but
It's a wow number.
so again, the why. Why do you think we're seeing that increase? What's happening that?
We do have Sammy Wiley here, who's our IHE literacy specialist, who could probably provide that information. Is it okay if she speaks to that? Okay.
It looks like there's a few slides that you have here that are not in our.
That was my fault.
No, it's
We'll
not a
get it
fault thing.
updated.
When there's good news like this, I would think that would be, but I didn't see it, so thank you.
Uh-huh.
My name is Sammy Willie, and I'm the Science of Reading Education Specialist. Everyone calls me Wiley, but it's Willie.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Like RC Willie, that's how I can remind everyone. Yes, we are super excited about these numbers. Lisa has prepared another report that gives a breakdown of the different programs and the different universities and the increases that we have had. And it's been super exciting. So a few months ago, we put into place that 75% passing threshold. And we had 8 out of our 9 universities surpass that by a lot. So high 80s, 90s%, which was better than we were anticipating. We also have it broken down by program within those universities. We have also implemented some Science of Reading awards to the universities and those programs. As to why I think it's working is I think the cut score made a big difference. So was it in 2022, 2023, there was no cut score, right? Okay. So then that cut score of 240 was established. And then last year was the official first year that the EPPs were being held to that 75% passing threshold, or they risk falling into a system of support with USBE. I think that those factors have played a huge part. I know that myself and Lisa's team has worked very closely with all of these university programs to ensure that they're adequately preparing their students for this assessment. We also have Science of Reading faculty members at each of the universities that have worked so hard to get these kinds of results. We meet with them monthly. I probably speak with them weekly. We have worked really hard together to get here. So overall, we're super excited. Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a couple more slides that just break this number down a little bit further. So this is the passing rates for our Apple programs and our university programs, which are both above that 75% threshold. Apple programs are at 85% and university programs are at 89%. I will say that our Apple programs are a little bit behind our universities in that their candidates, there's some that are grandfathered in. In our board rule, it says if they were enrolled prior to September 1st, 2022, they weren't required to take the test. So they're still kind of getting on board with that, but it's encouraging to see that pass rate this early in the game. And then this is divided up by license area. Last year we were seeing some troubling data from the special ed area where their pass rate was lower than everybody else. But this year we see that they are right up there with everybody, so that was encouraging. So they're 88 for early childhood, 89 for elementary, and 87 for special ed. And then the next slide is our university pass rates by institution. And we do look at, you know, the programs themselves within each of these institutions, but this is their overall institution pass rate. And you'll notice BYU is the highest with 93%. Western Governors, Weber State, and Utah Valley are kind of at the bottom, but it's not a very, you know, it's a very shallow bottom. So, because they're still at 88%. So that's encouraging. And then Westminster didn't have, I think they only had about 7 people that took the test. So we are masking their results for privacy. And then we did 7. And then we had similar privacy issues with our Apple programs because most of their programs are pretty small or they had very few people take the test. But we did have 6 programs that had 10 or more test takers that we could report their scores for. And their pass rates are there. I think the highest is Northeastern Utah Educational Service Center at 94%. And then the lowest right now is our Apple Special Ed program at 75%. But they still meet the threshold, so that's exciting. And then educator prep programs also include what we call our support service areas, which include school leadership, school counselors, school social workers, school psychs, audiologists, and speech language pathology. And then these are the enrollment and completer numbers for those license areas this last year. Oh, that's supposed to say SY25. I apologize. Yeah. That was my fault. So that is this year's numbers. And then I see a question.
Yeah, and I know this question was asked last year, and I can't recall the answer, but with the audiologist, the 75 enroll and the 1 completer, I remember that the answer made complete sense once it was given, but why do we see that dramatic drop off?
I think so, if it's the same answer as mine.
Let's see. The audiology, the program requires essentially the standard is a doctorate in audiology, and most of these people go into the private medical sector or public medical sector because the wage is just way more than they can make in public ed, as well as the market for audiology in public ed is really limited to the USDB, the Schools for the Deaf and the Blind.
Yep. And then the next slide shows trends in these programs. And I think as we were looking at the numbers, it's difficult to see if there's been an increase in any program except for school counselor. We have seen increases in school counseling programs in the last 4 years. I think there might have been, I'm not sure, this is the first time that we've looked at these trends this year, and so we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. That it looks like they're kind of up and down sometimes, and so we'll get some clarification about why that is, but it seems like school counseling programs are the ones that have seen the increase, and the rest of them have kind of remained steady.
Chair. Oh, thank you, Chair. And I would be curious to know if this also has to do with the funding that's been allocated with some of our grants at the legislative level as you're looking into that, because I do know, obviously, if there's more jobs, there's going to be more people that go into that. And I've seen that trend in District 9 as a trend where they've now hired a counselor at every elementary school where that wasn't the case before. So as you're looking into those trends, I'd just be curious to see if that impacts it as the funding piece.
Yep, we can
Thanks.
look at that. Thank you. Any other questions? I think that's the last slide for educator preparation. Okay, thank you.
And educator preparation ends when the licensing begins. Well, at least the professional licensing. So in Utah, we in 2020 simplified our licensing structure to have only 3 license levels. The professional license is when all of the educator preparation is completed and they've demonstrated all of the competencies that are required. The associate means that they've done something, a minimum number of competencies have been demonstrated, and in many cases, I would say most cases, they are either working as an educator and working towards that professional license. And then the LEA specific is for candidates that have not yet met the associate requirement, and the LEAs are working to provide personalized support with them so that they're qualified for their positions at their schools. So here in this slide, we've got the number of licenses that we've awarded by year, and we've separated this by both license level and school year. And I think one of the things to note is that we're seeing a decrease in the number of LEA-specific licenses that are awarded, which means that we have more educators working in Utah that have a professional and associate license, which means they are better prepared, which we know yields a lot of really great outcomes for not only kids, but also retention. And we'll get into some of those details in a couple slides.
Do you have any suppositions or data to suggest why we're seeing the reduction in the LEA-specific license?
I believe that it is, although this would be a total guess at this moment, is that because we have the increase of Apple enrollment, we have more candidates who are accessing educator preparation and earning that professional license than had previously had access. And so because they are prepared, then we need fewer of these LEA-specific licenses. Mm-hmm. In this next slide, we have it separated by license area. So right now there are 14 different license areas, the state board licenses across the state. You'll see, of course, that we have the most elementary license area awarded, and then followed closely by secondary education. We've got just over 4,700 teachers received a license area at the professional level, and then school leaders, and then student support, which are those specialty license areas. We predict that we're going to see a uptick in the secondary education for next year due to the recent adjustments the board has made to simplify the process to obtain the secondary license area for educators who've already demonstrated the professional requirements for content endorsements. And so be queued up for that number to get a lot bigger, I think, next year. This is one of the slides that shows that we actually have more professionally licensed educators in the state of Utah than we have previously. Right now, 93% of all educators have a professional educator license. And since about 2010, in the state of Utah, we've had between 90, 91, 92% of educators at the professional license level, and this is the highest number we've seen since then. And so that's very promising. We've disaggregated it by the different assignment areas that our educators are working in. And so you can see that we've got very high incidence, for example, in that teeny tiny audiology group, but a little lower in some of the other categories like our preschool license areas. This is one of my favorite slides. This slide shows how many teachers are working in the state of Utah, and this is comparing the last several years since 2020 when we went to that new licensing structure. It shows how many teachers are professionally qualified for their assignment, which means they have a professional license area, and the professional endorsement if it's required. And overall, we have seen the number of teachers that are not professionally qualified decrease. We're at the lowest percentage that we've seen in the last several years. At now 12% of teachers are not quite professionally qualified, but 93% of teachers have their license, but maybe are working towards adding an additional endorsement.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Height, I appreciate this data. This is great to see, and you're right, it is exciting. The closer we get to having 100% of our teachers highly qualified, right?
Yeah.
My question would be, I love how you've broken it out by elementary, secondary, special education. I'd also be curious to know, and not that you have the data right now, maybe as we're moving forward, if we also have the opportunity to look at that in our rural versus larger districts and or charters versus districts, to see if there's trends there that we could maybe help target which areas or which schools or districts that might need help in making sure that their teachers are licensed and highly qualified.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. I'm getting the birdie in my ear. That is something that we absolutely could include under the provision of equitable distribution of teachers, that students across the state, regardless of whether they're at a district school, charter school, a rural school, that they have equal access to a highly qualified teacher. We could absolutely include that. This next slide just takes that data down a little bit further to look at content areas. And so these are the percent of teachers who are not qualified for their position or underqualified for their position. You'll see that the total here is 11.82%, which is different than the previous slide that showed 12%. And that's because this slide is based on federal standards that include an administrative and support staff component, that the previous was just teachers. But this is very exciting. We have our largest need as far as content goes is in elementary, and that's reported for both the TH Bell Teacher Scholarship Program in Utah, as well as to the federal government for TEACH grants. Federal TEACH grants, that if they work towards an elementary license area in Utah, that they would be qualified for that additional funding. And that is not necessarily due to having the most needs as far as humans working in those positions, but it really is due to the number of elementary teachers that are required, since they typically have 25 to 30 students assigned to them, as opposed to a high school math teacher that could have several hundred. Next, we're going to start looking at our endorsements as we embark in the work to enact the board strategic plan to simplify licensing. One of the things that staff is working towards is looking at the endorsement system. And so to understand the structure and the landscape of where we are now, in the state of Utah, we have 150 active endorsements that are available, things like Spanish and biology and facts and health and human services and all of those things. We have 150, 79 fall under the CTE or career and technical ed space. And in this last year, 132 of those endorsements were awarded, and we have 18 that were not awarded even at the LEA specific level. And this graph just shows how many endorsements were awarded at the professional, associate, and LEA specific level.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious to know, because 150, that's a lot of endorsements to track for our agency. So I know that as a board, we've done I think you guys have done a good job supporting us in our goal to help us streamline options for teachers to get endorsements. My question would be, is there any discussions about how we can simplify the number of endorsements? Meaning, like, if I get an endorsement, I can teach a broader range of classes. So there's also more flexibility at a LEA or school level to then teach different courses. Are there discussions happening, and what can we do as a board to support that?
Thank you for that awesome and compound question. So we certainly are working towards that. For example, we're looking at the social studies endorsements right now. Currently, there are 7 different content endorsements that fall under social studies, and we're looking at simplifying that to perhaps 2. Is what has been the most recent conversation with the committee as well as staff. We're also looking at CTE areas. We have a lot of endorsements that maybe only qualify someone to teach 1 or 2 or 3 courses at the high school or middle school level. And so doing exactly what you have mentioned, Vice Chair, is trying to say, can we create a different or eliminate smaller ones, or we're trying to think about how we can do that to reduce the number of endorsements. And that's work that we have been actively and specifically working towards since November as staff. As far as what can you do, that is a great question. I don't know that I have a brilliant answer right now. Do you have any ideas? No, I got nothing. But we will absolutely ask you if we come up with something in the night.
Dr. Height, when it says 18 not awarded, that's across the entire state? And can you give us an indication of some of those endorsements which didn't have any activity?
Yes. So, for example, we have a world language endorsement in a lot of languages that are not more broadly taught. For example, Swahili, Arabic. I think were 2 of the ones that were not awarded this last year. We have some in the CTE space that were not awarded. For example, bicycle repair was not awarded this year. And so we're looking at some of those things, and like that might be a place to look to see, can we simplify our system really quickly by 18 endorsements, just because there's obviously not a market or need.
And Dr. Hutt, I really appreciate that not only do you focus on, the 132 that were awarded, but that you brought to the board's attention, the committee's attention at this point, those that weren't awarded. Could you put a list together in the packet in time for the board meeting where we can see the 18 which were not awarded in school year 2025, and then any that were not awarded over a 3-year period going back? I guess that would be to 2022. And if we could just include that and give the board some more granular visibility on those, and maybe that'll help spur a conversation in terms of this simplification process that Vice Chair Bollinger brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. We
you.
absolutely have that list ready for this last school year, but we'll look at a 3-year. That will be definitely doable. It may have, right, maybe all of the people teaching bicycle repair just got it last year, and so they're not included in the data. That is, we will do that. So this data is related to endorsements, and we've talked about generally looking at how teachers are qualified and if they're qualified at the professional level or not. This breaks that data down and looks at, do they have the professional endorsement, an associate endorsement, or an LEA-specific endorsement, or no endorsement at all, and breaks that down by content area. So you can see that our lowest number of professionally qualified teachers are in law and fire. We have a large percentage of school resource officers that teach law enforcement courses at the high school level, and similar with the fire component. And so that's typically why we see people who are not career teachers but are teaching, because they really are the experts in this space. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious to know, so we know that with the new Catalyst Center bill, there was a provision where those teachers didn't have to be licensed. Are we going to continue to track that they aren't licensed in the data? Or the reason I'm asking is because if we're looking at teachers overall, I'm just concerned that we're going to lose track of that field, and not saying that it's still in alignment with what code allows, but I would be curious to know if we're going to continue to track that and hope that we would.
Yeah, so due to the provision in the Catalyst bill from last year, HB 447, we are able to track it because teachers who are teaching in CTE without a license still qualify for CTE funding. And so we can track the number of courses that are being taught that receive CTE funding but are being taught by an unlicensed teacher. So we can absolutely track that number. I will say incidentally, and maybe anecdotally, that most districts and charters are, if they have someone who's not licensed, they're having those teachers obtain the LEA specific license. Mostly because, well, for two reasons. One is that then they're a licensed teacher and have to abide by educator ethical standards, as well as they qualify for the educator salary adjustment and teacher supplies and materials. And this last year, the educator salary adjustment was over $10,000, and so which goes directly to the paycheck of the teacher.
That small amount of money, though, that used to go to LEAs for having fully qualified teachers went away, did it not?
It did. As part of the change to the educator salary adjustment, the professional staff costs shifted, and that was it was a smaller add-on funding. The percentage of funding increased as a teacher had more years of experience as well as more formal education, meaning if their highest degree was a master's degree, then they would generate more funding for the school district or the LEA than if they had only a bachelor's degree. But that ended, and the increase, though, to LEAs overall was increased from $4,300 per licensed teacher to over $10,000, but they lost about $2,000 in that pro staff
So
cost.
that's where the money went from pro staff costs. And it's interesting because that would seem to be a good trade-off, but it kind of provides a disincentive for LEAs to sort of harass their employees to say, get fully licensed, not harass, but encourage their employees to get fully licensed because we get a little money for you.
Yeah, so the professional staff costs did determine, it was based on whether or not they were qualified for the assignment and not based on license level. So if a teacher was qualified for their assignment, even with an LEA specific license and had a master's degree, then they generated more income than somebody who had a bachelor's degree and an LEA specific license.
Right.
So there was not a differentiation in funding based on license level.
Thanks.
One of the things that I think is important to look at and know about licensing and teacher preparation is that it impacts students. And this is something that we're working on with WestEd to look into a little bit deeper, but this is data from the 21-22 school year for student proficiency. This is in grades 3 through 8, and it was the teacher's license level compared to the student proficiency. And so this is the percent of students who were proficient in language arts, math, and science based on their teacher's license level. Perhaps unsurprising, teachers with a professional license have students with better outcomes, and there certainly are a lot of factors involved there, but that is one thing to consider. We, at the request of Superintendent Hart, we updated this data to look at the most recent student outcome data, and we're able to look at this last school year student proficiency. And one thing to note, not only is the difference between professionally licensed and non-professionally licensed similar, but these percentages also show an increase overall of student proficiency statewide, which is really something to celebrate, that our students are learning more. This is my this is the most, I think this is the most important because this is why we show up and do our work to help prepare teachers and educators in the state and help them to get licensed, is because we know that it impacts kids. And that's why we all show up and do what we do. Yeah. This next slide shows that it's the same data as previous, except that it is disaggregated by all students and then students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, which are generally low income is how they are notated. And you'll see that not only is the impact of being part of that student population there, but having a professional licensed teacher is more impactful than when the student is low income.
Chair Carey, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
That's okay. You don't look up at me very often, so I don't expect you to see it. I've been waiting to ask this question, and I think it's more relevant if we go to the last slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I love this data and the fact that it just proves that if you have a professional license, you have better outcomes with students. So my question is, one of the funding requests from the board was to have a paraprofessional in K through 3 classrooms. And I know that they're not licensed. However, based on this data, when you have more experience, you have better outcomes. So is it on our radar? Is there anything that we can do where if this does go through and we do have paras in K through 3 classrooms, not just 1 year, but I mean, for the long run, how do we get them more trained? How do we get them more experience so we have outcomes like this?
So specifically for our paraeducators,
I know they're not
Yeah.
licensed, and I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. There are a couple of different things that we're doing at the agency to focus specifically on training paraeducators to provide them with, there's a new grant program that just recently started to provide specific training to help them support students in positive behavior in classrooms. And that's certainly one thing that we could look at. And then there are a couple of bills that are looking at training paraeducators to support other types of educator outcome or education outcomes like literacy. And so that could be something we could look at. As the paraeducators get involved in the K-3 space, if the legislature approves the board's request, we could certainly disaggregate this data by third grade to look at, is there a third grade difference between the years there wasn't a paraeducator in every classroom and then paraeducator is in every classroom. We could see if there's a difference between those years. Absolutely. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think one of the sort of maybe accidental benefits, and this is because I've had a couple of family members extended family members who fall into this, is when paras are in classrooms, they often find that they love it and they're good at it, and then that leads them into an Apple program or another more, or a professional program to become teachers, and they have actually experienced the classroom, so they're not one of those non-completers usually. They're one of those that goes on to be a really successful teacher. So I see it as a sort of a training ground and trial run to be a teacher. Would you like this? Do you do it well? So I think there's so many benefits to having paras in the classroom that are intended and not intended.
Yeah, and I would just maybe add that we're seeing a growth in all of the Grow Your Own programs in Apple SPED, the Grow Your Own Educator grant program, the Registered Apprenticeship program, where paraeducators who maybe haven't had access to becoming a licensed teacher for whatever reason that might be, but have been awesome paraeducators in some cases for decades, really are bringing that expertise into the teaching profession.
Quick question. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. No, never mind. Related question. you kind of occasionally mention grant programs for teachers that help or for both the LEAs and maybe the prospective teachers. Are they all state grants? Are there any federal grants that enable these teachers to do the same things?
Yes, there are a couple slides coming up that are going to talk about a couple of different options. The Grow Your Own Educator grant is a state-funded
Right.
program that is very popular amongst the LEAs as well as the participants. And then the Registered Apprenticeship grant is a federal grant that expires in June. And so we're looking for other ways to support the program, either with state funding or perhaps future federal funding. We'll see. That landscape is, as we all know,
Moving.
an unknown moving target.
Thank you.
Dr. Height, again, this data is fantastic. Thank you. I mean, it's a reflection of the great work you're doing. And as I'm looking at this data and I see the difference that it's making in the classroom, the students in the low income spectrum, is the data available to demonstrate a connection between the license level and cases that end up in UPAC? Is that data, and again, I don't know what it would show, but my suspicion and my hope would be that as you get this teacher licensure, as you increase in that down that road, that we would hopefully see a decrease in the number of educators in that range ending up in UPAC. Is that something that you track? Is that something that is readily available to pull?
Yeah, I mean, the data definitely exists within our Cactus data system, and would be fairly simple to pull, actually, to see how many, to get to the granular level that maybe like, do they end with a suspension or revoke, or like what the outcome is, would be a little bit trickier. But to know whether or not there's some sort of UPAC action and the license level would be fairly simple to get.
And if we kept that as an aggregate number with no identification of names or schools, that's information that we could share publicly in the committee or at the board level, I would suppose.
Yeah, and we could even further mask it. Instead of looking at how many teachers, look at the percent of teachers that are reported or have some action. So you could say, oh, 50% have this kind of a license, and 25 have this, and 25 have that.
And you understand my objective. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to see if
Yeah.
that data is readily available and pullable. Could you pull that and incorporate that in a slide here?
Yep.
And once that's pulled, could you share it with the committee in advance?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And again, Dr. Height,
Yeah, no.
if that's onerous, then I withdraw the request. But if it really is just matching things up on Cactus, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
sure
you.
my data team, who are rad and amazing, they're like, oh yeah, we can do that. Let me just add that to my list right now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Height.
Yep, you bet. Okay, our last, this is just showing you the data for the level of proficiency with the license level for this last school year. We didn't quite get it all the way to the very pretty bar chart, but you can see that the difference is there for all students versus low income, and the impact that having a professional license has. Okay, now we're to what I think is a fun part of the report, which is more about what are the things that happened this last year that have positively impacted teachers, teacher preparation, and licensing. So this was the federal grant that we just mentioned, is for the Utah Registered Apprenticeship Program for teachers, which is a work and learn workforce development program that yields a professional license when they have completed. Somebody works as an apprentice in a classroom with a highly qualified teacher and learn how to do the job, just like any other apprentice would. We are registered with the Department of Labor, and we have $2.2 million through a federal grant that expire this year that we are working through. We've got this slide did not get updated, but there's better data later. We'll fix that number. I don't know why that number didn't get fixed. But this is the money that we're looking to try and figure out how to keep the program sustainable. In this last year, we've simplified the license renewal, and it has been widely excited. It is so an excited thing for a teacher to be like, wait, that's it? That's all I have to do? Yes, that's all. And that has been at the direction of the board to make these simplifications for teachers who are working in our schools. It allows educators who've been working for all 5 years in education as an educator to complete the educator ethics review, do all of their professional learning and collaboration that's required by their employer, and then that's what they have to complete in order to renew their license. They don't have to document every moment that they were engaged in those activities and then have somebody review their paper and sign it off. We know that teachers who are working are engaging in this work, and it has been something that teachers have really, really appreciated in the field.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take a moment to celebrate this because I remember sitting here a year ago when I was new and I was like, we've got to make this we've got to figure out a way to do this. And so I just want to give a shout out to you and your team and the board for supporting this work to help our teachers because they're working so hard, and cutting some of this red tape helps us show our appreciation for them and helps them feel a little bit more like professionals. So just want to take a moment to celebrate this. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So a little bit more about the Registered Apprenticeship Program. These are pictures of some of our apprentices that are working in Utah schools, and this is their signing day. We do it up like you're gonna sign to play D1 football, and your employer is there, and we have representatives from the Department of Workforce Services and representatives from each of the universities that are supporting these apprentices and obtaining their degrees, and it really is really an exciting thing and has been life-changing for some of our apprentices, some of our pre-apprentices, and really some of our LEAs. So the apprenticeship is that you have a paid job and then you gain education and training, and then you end with a credential. In this case, it's a professional license. Statewide, we have 31 pre-apprentices who are working as paraeducators in schools and working to complete their general education requirements. We have 35 apprentices who are in the last 2 years of their bachelor's degree in ed prep and are working to demonstrate those competencies within their jobs as apprentices. It represents 21 LEAs statewide and 8 institutions of higher education, including some of our community colleges, Snow College and Salt Lake Community College. One of our employee partners, we've got 10 districts and 11 charters and 21 LEAs overall. One of the LEAs that is a huge component of our URAP program is North Sanpete School District. North Sanpete School District is a pretty small rural district. They have only 150 teachers in their district, and a third of them are eligible to retire in the next 5 years. And so they are looking at the edge of a teacher cliff. And so they have seen the Registered Apprenticeship Program as a way to grow their own workforce in North Sanpete County. in order to be able to find people who already live there, who want to live there, who are already connected and part of the community and want to be teachers to obtain the training and education needed to be a teacher. And I just returned this week from a registered apprenticeship conference in New Orleans where the assistant superintendent, Rena Orton of North St. Pete School District, presented with myself and my colleague, Christina Guevara, about the success of URAPT and the impact that it's making in their district. And when Assistant Superintendent Orton told them about their situation, there was a physical change in the amount of air in the room because everybody was gasping. But that was when everybody could really see the impact of how a program like URAPT can make impacts in rural schools. As we talked about, this is the funding that is set to expire. It currently supports $4,000 a year in education expenses for pre-apprentices and $10,000 in education expenses for our apprentices. It also supports a $10,000 LEA wage match at 50% for those apprentices who are working in the position as an apprentice, as well as a stipend for their journey worker teacher, who is their mentor teacher that is the expert in the classroom.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So, does this $2.2 million cover the individuals that are currently in the program for them to finish all the way through licensure? Or is this, if there's no more money, then they're just kind of left high and dry?
Mm-hmm. So my answer last year in June would have been, yes, we can carry this forward and it's going to cover them. It's going to be great. However, recent direction from the U.S. Department of Labor is that the monies that have not been spent by the end of June will not be spendable, and they will be taken back. And so we have been working, Lisa and I have been working at alternate options to fund this program because it is making such an impact, particularly in our rural school districts and charter schools. We have another charter system that has 9 apprentices at a charter school. And so because the value it's bringing to the state, we're looking at leveraging Grow Your Own Educator grant funds, as well as working with USHE and leveraging the Utah Futures work experience program there.
Thank you.
I just know how big of a impact this has had in Salt Lake District.
Mm-hmm.
I was there. What's the name of the company that has the railway company?
Union Pacific?
No, it's an S. It's an S. It's an S word.
I don't know.
You'd recognize it if I saw it. But anyway, they brought this.
Skagway?
They brought this. The company came to Salt Lake and arranged for a partnership and had a big kickoff. And the students that are benefiting from this are students who $10,000 a year makes a big difference to their families. And I was just so it's not only the teacher component, but it's the student component, community component that was so valuable. And last time I talked to the superintendent, it still was doing its work. And I'm glad you're looking for alternative sources of funding, but this is where this federal money means so much to families on the lower end of the income spectrum. And it's our tax. There are tax dollars. Yeah. So getting those back into our communities makes such a difference. So I just wanted to say that Salt Lake loves this program.
Yeah, it's really rad. We do have some rumblings that there is another grant specifically for teacher and educator apprenticeship that will be released sometime this spring and eligible for funding this fall. And we would hope to submit a grant proposal to try and obtain some of those federal dollars if they become available. One of the changes that happened in the world of licensing and teachers is a change, the implementation of the SHINE program, which is the supplement for highly needed educators. And this program replaced the teacher salary supplement program, which had previously provided a stipend for teachers who were working in high needs areas like the STEM field and special education if they had a degree or degree equivalent in those areas. And so this program started this last school year. So this school year is the first year. And it really is intended to provide more local control to determine what are the highly needed educators that LEA needs. And the allocation is based on the LEA's student count. And so then the LEA gets a number that's their allocation. They determine at that local level how to allocate those dollars to their highly needed educators. Here you can see some of the differences between TSSP and SHINE. LEAs have to determine 2 to 5 areas that they say are highly needed, and we have looked at these from across the state, and those areas can be as small as I need someone to teach this AP class, and other LEAs that say I really just need elementary teachers. So it really is 100% determined at the LEA level. They determine who qualifies, which areas are needed, and how much that stipend is going to be for the teachers. Student teacher stipends is now in its second year of implementation. This gives $6,000 to a student teacher who is working in an LEA as a student teacher. This last year, the board allocated an additional $500 for LEAs to cover their employment benefit costs like FICA and Social Security, et cetera. And the recipients who can participate in this program have to be attending an accredited college or university and completing their student teaching in Utah. They also are required to sign an affidavit that they intend to seek a license and work as a teacher in Utah.
Chair, if I may. And what happens if they choose not to? Anything? It's not like a contract where they have to pay back the money so they could sign it. It's just a goodwill. We are hoping that they stay.
Yeah, so the language of the bill does not require any repayment of the stipend, and neither does the board rule.
Follow up, if I may. Do we have data? So if we're in our second year, do we have any data from last year on how many actually stayed teaching from their student teaching?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I have that data, but we could certainly figure that out. Probably.
I would be curious to know. Just, I mean, we're looking at investments. If it's paying off, right? We want to continue, but I'd just be curious to know if that's available.
Yeah, we can look at that. I don't know if that's possible by the board meeting, but we can certainly look at it. Here we can see the difference in the allocation that was given to us from the state legislature, as well as the number of student teachers who've qualified for the stipend. Last year we had only 1,407 that were awarded, and this year, as of the day I put this slide together, there were 1,428 that have been awarded. We anticipate about 1,650 this school year by the end of the school year.
Just following up on Vice Chair Bollinger's question, is there any reason that was articulated by the legislature or that you have thought about? Why wouldn't we want these to be individuals who receive the money to stay in Utah?
I believe that the legislature, the board, as well as staff absolutely want these student teachers to work and teach in Utah. I think that sometimes life happens and life plans change, but I would argue that probably most of these student teachers are teaching in Utah, at least for a year or more.
Okay. And then can we go back one slide?
Yes.
With the SHINE, local control, local determination, that's fantastic. But then the very last one, it says, under TSSP, there could not be an unsatisfactory rating. Under SHINE, LEA determination. And in your experience, what have you seen that would preclude, like what are LEAs putting in there in that slot?
there has been a significant shift in educator evaluation in the last couple of years. And so it used to be that educators were receiving a summative rating every year, and now they're no longer required to do that every year. And so the LEA determination is making allowances for that. I haven't seen any policies that say if a teacher has an unsatisfactory rating that they're qualified. I have seen one that allows for 1 year of unsatisfactory as long as they're meeting some other support requirements.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we did it and made it all the way to the end. And so if there are any additional questions, I do want to give a special shout out to Kristen Campbell, who's our data specialist, who's fabulous and helped pull all of these numbers for us. And she and the other data specialists are really, I think, one of the more invaluable pieces of the agency.
Yeah, you won the lottery with Kristen, I've got to say. And
Yes, we did.
the program I was thinking of in Salt Lake, in order to give the program credit, is Stadler rail.
Oh, Stadler.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. They also make excellent pencils.
Mhm.
Thank you, Dr. Height. I appreciate that. Any other questions, thoughts? Really a great presentation. Thank you. Very informative. So the next item on the agenda is R277-322. I just want to, and I have a motion for that, but I just want to start by saying I want to appreciate the I think at first there were many people who thought this wasn't going to go anywhere and they dismissed it. And then slowly they came on board and said, well, keeps coming back. I think now the message is loud and clear that regardless of what comes out of this committee in terms of R277-322, everyone now understands that that something's going to happen, right? And I think we all got the letter from the Superintendent's Association sharing their thoughts. The governor's office was kind enough to reach out and share their feelings on this. And since I've been on the board, I've heard from more superintendents than on any other action that the board in every capacity has taken. And so I appreciate that, but I think it's also a reflection of the weight of this rule. The rule makes clear that if you don't comply with this rule in certain areas, the LEA waives its general immunity, meaning they could be sued monetarily. And I think that also gets people's attention, rightfully so. And I think the legislature did that by design. So I had a candid discussion with the superintendent who said, why do you keep pushing this? And, we all have to live on pins and needles when this is happening. And I have empathy for that point, but I have more concern and more empathy for the individuals who should not be in our public schools, should not be anywhere near children, who take advantage of the gaps that we currently have in our system. And when I say that, what I mean is, if we have an individual who is not a licensed educator and they call our hotline to report misconduct, if this individual is not a licensed educator, our audit team tells them they have the wrong number. And the individuals on the other end, they don't quite understand that because this happened at school. But because they're not a licensed educator, we really don't have jurisdiction to act on the license because there is no license to act on. I was talking to a member of our staff who said that, they got a call to the hotline by a charter school, and the charter school was very concerned that this person who had applied should not be in any public school or any school. And as they looked at this resume of this individual, they had already taught at 3 or 4 different charter schools. And this individual would quit prior to action being taken, meaning a termination. And that allows this individual to hop from school to school to school to school. That needs to stop. And I believe that this rule and the changes that are being made will give this board a stronger role in the ability to stop abusive conduct towards the kids and the students in our public schools. That being said, I do think, again, because we're dealing with the general protection that schools have where you can't sue them, they have immunity for a great swath of activity. Because we're wading into that space, I think it's important that we get this exactly right. And I'm grateful to see that the superintendents have finally caught on that, yes, we are going to take action on this. And, you know, what that action will be determined by this committee. But when I hear that, one of the complaints, no, I shouldn't say complaints, one of the concerns was, well, look, your own estimate says this may add $250,000 in implementation costs. I asked, well, how much does your superintendent get paid? More than 250 or less? When we're dealing with these issues of keeping individuals who should not be in our public schools out of our public schools, I think that is the one area that I look at and say, yeah, if this takes extra funding, we have to find it. And that doesn't mean we have to be callous about it. It doesn't mean that we can be dismissive about the concerns. And if there's ways to minimize the reporting requirements or other things that would contribute to it, I'm happy to consider that. But in light of the feedback that I have received in the last, I would say 72 hours, as this day approached, more and more people were reaching out. Just as, who was it, Greg that spoke earlier? And just as he said, most of them had great things to say about it, just like he did. There was a lot he liked about this, but there were some concerns, and I think we have to be cognizant of those. So I will be meeting with those individuals. My motion today would be that this matter be carried until our March Law and Licensing Committee meeting. And I know that didn't sound like a complete sentence, but that was the that was the sentence. So with that, I guess since we're going to debate this motion, Vice Chair, I'm going to ask you if you could chair this part of the committee, because this is my my draft. Thank you.
I'd be happy to. So it looks like we have Member Lear.
And I'd like to make a substitute motion that this be delayed until April. I have seen month after month, and to your point, Chair Carey, of LEA saying we're on pins and needles, and some may view that as great. They're anticipating this important rule. I view it as, in this time of stress for LEAs when budgets are being cut, I view it as not a good situation for our partners. And I want to give a date that we really can realistically have something in place, and with, or at least to propose. And with the legislature and the concerns that will change for LEAs in the legislature, and probably 20 rules at least, I think we ought to be realistically giving them a date instead of saying, just kidding, every month. Oh, we're going to bring this rule forward. Oh, just kidding. And while if Chair Carey believes that this is going to happen, It might. I don't know whether in the end it happens, but at least we ought to have a firm date that's realistic, that LEAs can believe there'll be a real discussion of this rule, not a delay, and not be it's anxiety inducing. I don't think it's fair. So I'm willing to say April and hope it can be done by April. But I want to also express again my concerns, and those also feed into why it's going to take more than 3 weeks with the legislative session in play to do this and do it right. And I sort of want to also use Chair Carey's words from yesterday that we have a code of conduct in place. I would say it's excellent. I think it was developed by a very seasoned education law attorney, and I thought she was extra conscientious in making sure that 160 LEAs had a policy in place, that the USBE developed a model policy, and that those are posted appropriately. That's a big, and the training matches what is in the statute and what is in our rules. So we've got a good policy in place. The fact that it might be improved, I don't think should cause added anxiety for LEAs right now. And and be able to work on it for the next month. I just want to mention a couple of other things, and then I'll hear what others have to say. But we still have that problem of crossing out position of special trust and then using it throughout the rule. And it was originally designed to cover the coaches or the other non-licensed individuals who work with teachers, or no, sorry, who work with students. And I really think that's a very important area. We've somehow got to cover those non-licensed, seriously invested individuals who work with our students. So that's right now very confusing and needs to be fixed. The rule purports to provide a model code of conduct. It doesn't. It tells about requirements. A model code of conduct would be a written code of conduct, written as if it is a code of conduct, and then LEAs can look at that and decide how they want to increase the requirements, but they can't lessen the requirements. So what we have here, which says this is a model, the following is a model code of conduct, is not. It's a list of requirements. With the code of conduct that changes, there'll come training requirements. There will become, the LEAs will have to adjust their current model or their current code of conduct. So I think allowing the time for them to do that and giving them a time period after the legislature is much more appropriate. I think there is an issue, and we also have some great input from AAGB about employee speech, that she prepared a memo for Chair Carey upon his request. And since she's the board's attorney, we all should have access to that. And it's excellent. Wasn't that provided? No, I don't.
I think it was provided to our whole committee. Yeah.
And maybe I just missed the email, but I got it from Ashley separately. But I just hope we can read it, because the rules have changed about educator free speech, and that's and employee free speech. And if some of you may have read about Coach Kennedy from Minnesota, Wisconsin, I always get those states mixed up, who wanted to pray, maybe Rod will appreciate this, wanted to pray with his football students. And for decades, that's not been allowed. But the Supreme Court took a different analysis about 2022, and they didn't look at a coercion test. They looked at a free exercise test and said, yes, he should be able to do that. So we've got to be able to make sure we're keeping up with the case law. And the line in here on line 135 and 136 that talks about certain behavior on and off duty is not the law anymore. And we've got to figure that out, because it may be different for educators than it is for all other employees, and may be different for a 15-year-old, 15 hour a week sweeper than it is for a school psychologist or a coach who interacts with track athletes almost all the year. So I think we've got to make sure we get that balance right, and that's not right now. To say on or off duty for all employees just makes no sense. So that's an important one. I also, and this is my consistent plea, and I'll say it again, we are having a UPAC audit. It won't be completed for 10 months, at least. So to have a whole group of education employees who have one standard as to be determined by a UPAC discussion, and then have another code of conduct in another place in our board rules and in the law makes no sense to me. It adds confusion. So I think those two have to align. And if it takes a while to get it right, it may take a while to get it right. But I don't think throwing that confusion into the laps of LEAs is a fair practice. So I have those concerns and a few others with some of the wording and within the rule as it's written now. So I think we need to do some work. I'm hoping that April will give us enough time, but I'm willing to say, let's give a firm date of April and make something realistic.
Chair Carey.
Thank you. And look, I think Board Member Lear, and I will accept her date of April as a friendly to my motion and move it to April. But to me, this matter is pressing because it represents a gap in our oversight, general control, and supervision. And again, I am grateful for everyone who has the feedback, Board Member Lear and her feedback. I think we get to a better place. And as chair, I feel good when I'm able to report out the work of this committee to the board, and I'm able to say this committee passed something 5-0. I really enjoy being able to do that. And that is my, I don't want to say it's my goal because at the end of the day, I have to support what I think is best policy. But historically, this committee has been able to say, I don't like this, but I can do this, but if we do this, and then we get to a point where I think best policy is created. So I think April, and part of it is when Board Member Lear said, the person of special interest. I have a different view on that, but I noticed there's a bill pending in the legislature now to redefine what person of special interest is. And so I can see the wisdom of saying we're trying to hit a target that is moving, especially at warp speed during the legislative session. So I think giving it that time to see where the dust settles and then taking this on makes sense. So with that, my motion would be that, I'm sorry, you're chairing. This happened to you yesterday, so I apologize.
You're good.
But that is, I do want to get to a point where this committee is saying, hey, we all see this. We want to back it, and I will work towards that end. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Member Longacre.
Yeah, I just want to thank this committee and especially Chair Carey for giving us more time. We are in a legislative session and our focus needs to be there for the next, 30 some odd days. So I appreciate the time. And I also just want to say thank you to this committee. This is a great committee to be on because it's healthy back and forth and we listen and we take note of our opinions. And we just come together really well. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And I just want to reiterate what Greg said. And I'm sorry I didn't get his last name from South. What was it? Mon. I love that he said that he supported the goal. We are focused on student safety. If there's some things that we need to clean up so we can all come and agree on this together, that's fantastic. But there is a goal and student safety is our number one focus. So thank you, committee. Love you guys.
Thank you. And I would just echo what Member Longacre has to say. I think that everyone in this room wants our schools to be safe and really truly prioritizes that. And I do appreciate also the opportunity to extend this because we do want to get it right and we want to make sure that we incorporate all the feedback. And I've had a lot of people reach out and I've, shared this with a few is they want to be involved in the discussions, but they are definitely trying to keep up with what's happening up at the legislature and the moving targets. And so I appreciate everyone's willingness to really give this the time that it deserves. So with that, any other discussion to this motion? Okay, so the substitute motion is that the committee continue discussion of R277-322 to April law and licensing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, and I will turn the time back over to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. Let's just take a 10-minute break. We've been at this, for a few hours now. Let's do a 10-minute break. Thank you. Okay, just welcome everyone back to our law and licensing meeting. I think the next agenda item is action item R277-750, education programs for students with disabilities. This is a request for continuation. And Director Rasmussen, are you queuing that up for us?
Yeah, I'll cue that up.
Thank
So
you.
the three remaining rules that we have on the agenda are all up for their 5-year review. We don't have any substantive amendments proposed for any of these rules, but they do need to be continued in order to remain in effect. On each of these rules, we've discussed the rule with staff who have indicated that the rules are necessary and that they would like to see the board continue these rules. So if there are questions about the substance of this rule, we have Laurel E. Gillespie with us online who can answer those questions. And just asking, we'll note that on this rule in particular, we do expect to bring the rule back to committee after the session, probably some changes at some point in the future, but at this point, just need the continuation.
And Director Rasmussen, it's my understanding that you have now requested that the special education rules manual dated June 2023 be placed into backup. Because it was not there
it's-
when I had,
It is in backup now. It is always online, but it's on backup. It's in backup now.
yeah. Just for the public, I like them to be able to come to that section and see everything without having to go around and visit different websites. So I thank you for doing that. What- It's only a tree. Okay. Now that that commentary is done. So so R277-750, are there any questions from the committee? If none, we're ready for a motion. Vice Chair Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion that the committee continue R277-750 education programs for students with disabilities and forward to the board for approval.
Not seeing any lights. The motion before the board is that the committee continue R277-750 education programs for students with disabilities and forward to the board for approval. All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. The next item before the committee is R277-604, Private School, Homeschool, Scholarship, and Bureau of Indian Education, BIE, student participation in public school achievement tests. I think Director Rasmussen already given us the summary of that. This is just up for continuation. And if there's no discussion or questions for Director Rasmussen, we would be ready for a motion.
I'm happy to make the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
All right, I would make a motion that the committee continue R277-604 Private School, Homeschool Scholarship, and Bureau of Indian Education, BIE, student participation in public school achievement tests and forward to the board for approval.
Okay, the motion for the committee is that the committee continue R277-604 Private School, Homeschool, Scholarship, and Bureau of Indian Education, BIE, student participation in public school achievement tests and forward to the board for approval. Not seeing any lights. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. The next matter before the board is R277-924. I was reading off the 924, which is Partnerships for Student Success Program. And I do have questions about this, but Vice Chair, I see your light is on. Do you have questions as well?
I just want to make a comment. I'm happy to go after your questions.
Oh, okay.
So we have Jeff Ojeda here from staff who can answer questions about this program.
Thank you. And I made this comment in our board meeting, and that is that I do want to spend time in committee doing more evaluation of the efficiency and efficacy of the programs that we have. And what brought this on was the request by the legislature for us to start, identifying programs for possible reduction. And to me, that was reduced to well, where's the money here's a pot of money, let's take this pot. And I really think instead of looking at the dollars, we should look at which programs are working and which ones are not working. And I think the time to do that is in committee. And so, for better or for worse, you are the first recipient of the efficiency question. So, could you just give the board an overview of the Partnerships for Student Success Grant Program, just generally, and then I'll just ask a few questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you, Chair Carey and the committee for the time to answer any questions that you may have. The Partnerships for Student Success grant is really the little grant that could. And I say that laughingly, but also very seriously, because it is a relatively small program. However, it does meet needs that no other grant program does in the state. And the way that it does so is by really focusing on the feeder patterns and the system of education and how that's helping support students throughout. So the legislation specifically guides us in a K through 12 feeder pattern and what kinds of outcomes we're seeing through that. And those outcomes really are, well, as you've heard from a few of our people already, they are really making a difference and having an impact. The feeder pattern itself really helps look at a systems basis overall for what's happening with our students. It requires a $1 to $2 match from our partners. So we, or for every dollar that is put into the, given from the grant, recipients must put in $2 to support the grant as well. So it's not just bringing in the funding that is allotted for it, but it actually brings in a considerable amount of funding as well to support the services that are being rendered. And those services build infrastructure. If we want to look at it this way, direct services would be bricks and a wall, right? And this program kind of acts as the mortar in between. That is, what are the services and the needs to help bring all of those direct services together so that they are efficient and that they are effective. And if they're not, then let's move that out of the way and make room for something that does. It also provides opportunities for school administrators and staff to have time to be school administrators and staff. Otherwise, they would be trying to build the logistics and take the time out of their day in order to support these types of partnerships. What kind of partnerships do we have? We have 45 partnerships that are built with nonprofits, 23 partnerships with health organizations. We have 16 partnerships with government entities. We have educational partners, 45 of those throughout the state. We have community partners, those are numbered at 11, and then business partners that are 8.
So, and I have the report from reporting year 2025.
Yes.
And in here, there's an Appendix A, grantee logic models, and it lists partners.
Mhm.
And so when you refer to partners, are those the partners that we're referring to, such as Ogden Weber Community Action Partnership, Roy Schools, United Way of Northern Utah, Latinos in Action, Royals in Action? Are they the partners that, these
Yes.
partnerships that you're referring to?
Mhm.
And how are those partnerships identified?
They are based solely on the needs and the outreach that happens through the LEAs, and we have 2 community partnerships, or 2 community organizations that receive funding to build those partnerships with local school districts.
And which 2 organizations are those?
They are United Way of Northern Utah and Promise Partnership Utah.
And when these partners are approved, is it those 2 entities, United Way of Northern Utah and this other entity, that identify these and make those partnerships, or do we have to sign off on that as a board?
Those partnerships are made regionally, so the board does not sign off on those. but they are partnerships that are needed in the local community. So throughout the state, the other grant receivers, just so that you're aware, are Alpine School District, Canyon School District, and Weber School District. The grant is an open application, so anyone, any LEA or any community organization can apply for the grant. And then the requirements are that they must work with an LEA, that they must build community partnerships to help support what the LEA is striving to achieve. And then we measure that through third grade reading, eighth grade math proficiency, and high school graduation.
And just a few more questions. The link to the application,
Yes.
the one that I found online took me to an older application. Is that the one that we're currently sending people? Like it had the year 2022 or 2023 on it.
So it's the application is not annual. So the last application that was used is the one that you found online. The next application cycle will happen at the end of this calendar year, or excuse me, academic year. So in the fall, or excuse me, in the spring or later on this year, new applications will be posted, and grantees can apply then for the coming year.
And you said this is a relatively small program. In terms of how much money we're distributing through grants, what is that total figure?
The FY26 amount that was allotted by the legislature was 2.8 million.
Can I interject a question?
Please.
Chair Carey, and it's all state money?
It's all state money.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And my final question is, so we have all these great partners, and as I've looked at this list, I think great organizations doing great things. How do we, with so many, like I'm just looking at this one, this is Weber School District. We have all these partners.
Yes.
And at the end, we're like, okay, now let's see if it's working. And we go to proficiency. And thank you for that data. Fantastic information, easy to understand. How are you able to discern with all these different partners working in tandem to achieve this goal, which organizations are contributing most effectively to the achievement of that goal?
That's a great question. And because this grant is meant to help systems and not necessarily direct instruction to students, that's a really hard thing to measure. However, under our logic models that our organizations follow and work through, we have very specific outcomes that are coming from that. So as an example, in Alpine School District, one of their focuses in graduation was to increase the graduation rate by 1%. They did so by 1.1% this past year. Canyon School District wanted to improve on track status for students by 20%. They did so by 23%. The United Way of Northern Utah set a goal of 81% of seniors in student control caseloads will graduate on time. They met 96.8%. So we see a definite increase in student outcomes, even though we can't attribute it specifically to any given program. We can say that of the 32,938 students that this funding touches, that there are measurable outcomes that are happening that are supporting student academic increase.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And like I said, this, and hopefully it didn't come across as a, hey, this isn't working. I'm just trying to get a better understanding. That
I understand. And it's a really hard grant to kind of follow because of that. Usually we're used to saying, well, if we put this many dollars in professional development, then this is the outcome that we would see, right? And we know that it's directly from that specific case. Because we have a group of partners coming together, one of the great things about this grant is that it really provides a safety net in creating that for students. So we're not letting kids fall through the cracks, but actually ensuring that service from the time they enter our schools to the time they leave are being as supported as possible in the most likely of challenges that they may be facing. And we're talking about low-income schools here, so clearly there are going to be at-risk students and challenges there that need that kind of support.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee, Vice Chair Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for this information. And I appreciate those that took the time to provide some public comment as well. I actually had the opportunity to watch a report out from Alpine District recently on some of the impact it's had, and was really impressed with the data. And we realized too, right? There's a great logic model to your point of what you were saying, but it is hard to do correlation versus causation.
Yeah.
I do appreciate about this grant is that there's a match, that it's the community partners that are also putting money into it, so it spreads the money that the state's investing. And I know as a board, we've been having discussions about what services are really okay for schools, or which services should schools provide and which services should be provided outside of school. And I think that this is a great way to get the community involved, to your point of they are provided these extra supports and services. I mean, I think when I listened to that presentation from Alpine District, it was things like getting glasses for kids and food and those basic needs. When we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those basic needs are met through this program. So it is something that I do support, and I've seen success in it. And these numbers are of data. I love that it's tracked with data, so we can look at the measuring of the impact, and appreciate what Chair Carey's saying. As we're looking at all of these programs, it is easy to look at just numbers and dollars and be like, oh, that's a large amount, we can just cut that. But when we actually see the impact it's having, I don't know if there's a price we can put on the fact that now a kid has glasses and they can then read.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion? Not seeing any lights. We are ready for a motion. Vice Chair Bollinger.
I guess I'm left solo today. That's okay. I'm happy. Oh, do you want to do it? Okay.
Member Hall.
Want to make the motion that the committee continue R277-924 Partnerships for Student Success Program and forward to the board for approval.
Okay, the motion before the committee is that the committee continue R277-924 Partnerships for Student Success Program and forward to the board for approval. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. I think that is everything. Yeah, one final motion. Okay, motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, adjourn. Thank you.